Man is back.
Oh, okay, boys. Oh my gosh, the ring got messed up. This is a 5 out of freaking 5.
It is beat making time.
Next week is E3 week. My album comes out next week.
I have the leopard.
This is your boy.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the YouTube citizens, y'all know who this is. This is your boy Dash to Inferno. Back at it with another Pokemon Unite commentary video for you guys. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, we got ourselves a doozy of a story here. I cannot believe this one. Oh, so, check this out. I was like, I gotta go back to the and what actually happened. So, this past weekend was a good weekend for wrestling. And yeah, this is a wrestling show. And this is blowing up ever since Sunday, and it's still blowing up to this day because more news came out today, or really tonight, prior to me recording this. So, what happened? So, this past weekend there was 3 wrestling shows in 2 days. WWE had a wrestling show on Saturday called Clash at the Castle that took place in Canada, which is somewhere in Europe. And then there were 2 wrestling shows on Sunday. WWE had another show with their brand NXT called, Worlds Collide. That was early in the day because they did not want their third brand, NXT, going up against AEW show All Out, which was the night show. That one was at 8 o'clock. So yeah, AEW, WWE, they kind of like competing against each other. But WWE have nothing to do with this. I'm just going to go out there. So here's what happened. AEW show goes on. We had a great tag match. And then the main event saw CM Punk in his hometown Chicago defeating Jon Moxley to regain the AEW World Championship. Well, after the show, AEW did something. They had something called an AEW All Out Media Scrum. So they had like their media post show where there's actually members of the media who were there asking the owner, Tony Khan, questions along with whatever wrestlers he had sitting at the podium next to him. And it's weird because even though CM Punk was in the main event, he was up there first. Normally, guys who's in the main event, more likely the winners, will show up last because they just got back to the locker room. You know, they got it freshened up and all that jazz. But that's not the case here. CM Punk just got done wrestling the match, saw who his next number 1 contender is, and then he just went straight there, which is weird. But that's not the point. Here's what happened. Somebody asked him a question, and this was Wrestling Inc. Senator News editor Nick Hausman asked him a question regarding Colt Cabana. So, for those of you who don't, well, really, for those of you who don't know or remember, actually, Colt Cabana is another wrestler who, once upon a time, was really good friends. They was really best friends. They were best friends with CM Punk. So Colt Cabana was best friends with CM Punk. Now, let me give you guys some context behind this. So here's what happened. First of all, let me repeat the question. So Nick asked Punk, did he have anything to do with Colt Cabana being fired from AEW? I'm not sure that was the exact question word for word, but it's something along those lines. So let me give you guys some context behind this question before we get on to what Punk said. Because that's the main story here, what Punk said. So, 7 years ago, I actually did a 2-part video about this. So, 7 years ago, or slightly over 7 years ago, CM Punk, once upon a time, was a part of WWE. But after the same year, Daniel Bryan won the WWE World Heavyweight Championship in New Orleans, prior to that, actually, he left the company. Or he walked out, he stopped showing up. And then later that year, he was fired. And then there was this legal issue between CM Punk and WWE. And apparently, I think they settled, but CM Punk got a lot of money from that settlement, even though we have no clue how much, but let's just say he got a lot of it. Well, later on, either that year or the next year, he showed up on his best friend's podcast. So I think it's called The Art of Wrestling with Colt Cabana. And he basically explained everything that happened during his last 2 or 3 years working with WWE and what happened afterward. Again, he didn't mention the money or anything like that. But one of the things that, and I covered this on my channel here on my channel. And I'll link, leave the link to both of those videos in the comment section below. But one of the things that he said, we're gonna talk about this one, is the fact that he had a lump, like on the last few months of, while he was there, he had a lump on his lower back, and he went up to the doctor, who name at the time was, if memory serves correctly, I think his name was Chris Amann. Yes. So I'm not sure if he's still there now, or he left at some point. But yeah, the doctor that was there at the time was Chris Amann. And what happened was CM Punk went to the doctor and said, like, yo, I got this lump on my back. It don't hurt, but it's there. It wasn't there before. So then he was like, okay, leave it alone. Okay. Well, weeks went by. Hey, that lump that's on my back is getting bigger, and now it's starting to hurt. And the doctor, according to Punk, said, okay, let's put a Z-Pack on it. So weeks after weeks after weeks, he kept putting the Z-Pack on it as if that was doing anything. But instead, it was doing, not only was it not doing anything, but it kept going. It kept going and going and going. So then what happened was in 2014, so yeah, that's when he left. In 2014, January 2014, his I think that it was, no, like his girlfriend at the time, well, now they're married. His girlfriend at the time, AJ Lee, who was another former WWE superstar, by the way, she recommended him to go see her doctor. So he went to see her doctor, and the doctor was like, yo, that's a full-blown staph infection. Like, you was working on that, you should have been dead. And, he's supposed to go to the hospital to take care of that, but Punk was like, yo, I don't have time for that. So the doctor who he saw was like, yo, okay, we just got to squeeze it out. And he squeezed that joint out, and now Punk was feeling better. The lump wasn't there, meaning his lower back wasn't hurting, and he was able to sleep. He was also having diarrhea issues. One point, I think it was on SmackDown in December, or I don't remember, but prior to him leaving, he actually crapped himself on TV. So yeah, that actually happened. Now, and of course, all this was explained during Colt Cabana's podcast. And of course, CM Punk and Colt Cabana, they was basically trash talking the doctor, like, yo, he's incompetent, all that stuff. Well, so even though CM Punk won that lawsuit, or they settled, I believe, and CM Punk got a lot of money from it, the doctor himself, Chris Amann, sued. He filed a lawsuit against Colt Cabana and CM Punk. So what happened there was this, for defamation. And here's where things got interesting. And I'm a quote here. Cabana's lawyers, okay, so actually, no. So I ain't gonna get into that. So here's what happened. So the lawsuit was going on, and CM Punk and Colt Cabana, obviously, apparently they lost the lawsuit and they had to pay. Well, not only was this lawsuit was going on, but Colt Cabana was spotted backstage at one of the WWE shows while this lawsuit was going on, which pissed Punk off. But comes to find out, there was money issues that basically ended their friendship. Both of those things ended their friendship. So here's a quote regarding, and then this leads to Colt Cabana filing a lawsuit against CM Punk. So here's what happened there, and I'm going to quote here. Cabana's lawsuit contends Punk promised to help him out with the legal bills that they amassed fighting the defamation lawsuit that was brought upon them by Chris Amann, the WWE doctor. Cabana claims Punk told him in a text that he would be 100% covered. Punk has failed to keep that promise, leaving him with unpaid legal bills totaling $513,736 according to the lawsuit. Punk asked Cabana to pay half of the legal fees, which comes out to $256,888, saying you are on your own. So at that time, Cabana was seeking a total of $1.2 million in his lawsuit for general and exemplary damages, which led to CM Punk countersuing Colt Cabana. So there you go with that. Now, the result of that was this. At some point, they must have squashed the lawsuit and they compromised. But despite that, they stopped talking to each other. They're no longer friends. Well, fast forward to the start of AEW. At some point after AEW got started, Colt Cabana was brought there and he was working for the company. Well, a few months after that, CM Punk was brought there. So there you go with that. And then what happened was this past May, Colt Cabana stopped showing up on AEW television. What ended up happening was this. Because Tony Khan also now on ROH, Ring of Honor, which is another wrestling promotion. So he owns 2 wrestling promotions, by the way. And what ended up happening was that Colt Cabana is now a part of the Ring of Honor brand. And he's now working backstage. He's not even, well, I'm not sure they have a television deal, but he's not even doing wrestling shows. I think they're on the internet, on YouTube. But nevertheless, I think he was doing working behind the scenes now, not really wrestling. So as of now, so there you go with that. And one of the beliefs is that CM Punk got Tony Khan to remove Colt Cabana off of AEW and put him at Ring of Honor. And now we get to the quote. We get to the quote of what CM Punk said this past Sunday night. So, but before we get to that, there's one more thing I want to talk about regarding the whole Colt Cabana going to the Ring of Honor scenario. Apparently, word of that CM Punk was involved with that, apparently was spewed from the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, aka the Elite, aka the executive vice presidents of AEW. So now let's get to the quote and let's see what he said, what CM Punk said in response to that question that Nick Horseman asked him. And I'm quoting him here. And this on YouTube. Like the entire media scenario is on YouTube. So here's what he said. And there's gonna be a lot of language in there, so be warned. I haven't had anything to do with Scott Colton, aka Colt Cabana, Scott Colton, his real name by the way, in almost a decade. Probably wanted nothing to do with him even longer than that. It's fucking unfortunate that I have to come up here and speak on this when I'm on my time and this is a fucking business. While I'm a grown-ass adult man and I decided not to be friends with somebody is nobody else's fucking business. But my friends, if I fall backwards, would catch me. Scott Colton, I felt, never would have. My problem was I wanted to bring a guy with me to the top that did not want to see me at the top. Okay? You call it jealousy, you call it envy, wherever the fuck it is. My relationship with Scott Colton ended long before I paid all of his bills. I have every receipt, I have every invoice, I have every email. I have the email where he says, and I quote, I agreed to go our separate ways, I would get my own lawyer, and you don't have to pay anymore. That's the email that I have. And the only reason the public did not see it is because when I finally had to countersue him, through discovery, I'm assuming Punk and his lawyers, discovered he shared a bank account with his mother. That's the fact. And as soon as we discovered that fact and we subpoenaed old Marsha, he sent the email, oh, can we please drop all this? Now it's 2022. I haven't been friends with him since at least 2014, late 2013. And the fact that I have to sit up here because we have irresponsible people who call themselves EVPs, executive vice presidents, by the way, and couldn't fucking manage a target, and they spread lies and bullshit and put into a media that I got somebody fired when I have fuck all to do with him, want nothing to do with him, do not care where he works, where he doesn't work, where he eats, where he sleeps. And the fact that I have to get up here and do this in 2022 is fucking embarrassing. And if y'all are at fault, fuck you. If you're not, I apologize. He continued on, and he went from talking about Colt Cabana and the EVPs to, check this out, whatever I did to do in this world to deserve an empty-headed fucking dumb fuck like Hangman Adam Page, who is another AEW wrestler, who is still there, by the way, to go out on national television and fucking go into business for himself. For what? What did I do? Didn't do it. And I hate this phrase. I'm not going to say it. So I'm going to use my own version of it. Didn't do a goddamn thing. So, yeah. And there's more to it in regards to what he said about Hangman Page. And I'm going to continue on with the quote here. I'm trying to run a fucking business. And when somebody who hasn't done a damn thing in this business jeopardizes the first $1 million gate this company has ever drawn off of my back and goes on national television and does that, is it assuming because something happened where Hangman Adam Page did a promo, he went off script and basically went off on CM Punk when they had like their program. And this led to CM Punk winning the first AEW World Championship. So this was a few months ago. But let me continue on with the quote real quick. It's a disgrace to this industry. It's a disgrace to this company. Now we're far beyond apologies. I gave him a fucking chance and it did not get handled. And you saw what I had to do, which were very regrettable, lowering myself to his fucking level. So now, obviously, there was other stuff they said. He also talked about MJF, because at the time, MJF, well, he still is the #1 contender, but he, like, the mindset here is CM Punk versus MJF again, this time for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship, because MJF earlier that night, Sunday night, won a ladder match that made him the #1 contender. So there's that. Now, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega did not like those comments. They obviously had issues with those comments. Now, here's where things got really interesting. Now, there's two sides to this story, but I can tell you the middle ground in regarding what actually happened. The Young Bucks and Kenny Omega just happened to, and then I guess they saw, I don't know who approached who, but apparently what happened was this. The Young Bucks and Kenny Omega came to wherever locker room CM Punk and his current best friend Ace Steel, who is an AEW producer, by the way. So they were CM Punk and Ace Steel was hanging out. The Young Bucks and Kenny Omega showed up at their locker room, wherever they were at. And what happened was this. CM Punk punched Matt Jackson, who is one of the members of the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks are brothers, by the way, Mac Jackson and Nick Jackson. So CM Punk punched Mac Jackson. And then what ended up happening was Ace Steel threw a chair and it hit Nick. And then he grabbed Kenny Omega's hair and started biting him. So all of that happened. All of that happened. Now we get to the point of who was the aggressors here. So on one side, here's what happened. The Young Bucks came up to the door, tried to get in. CM Punk and Ace wouldn't let them in. So the Young Bucks kicked the door down. And CM Punk and Ace Steel was really in defensive mode here, and they were defending themselves because apparently Ace Steel's wife was in there, so he was trying to protect her. So that's when the whole, they start punching and throwing chairs and biting people, stuff like that. So that's one side of the story. Here's another side of the story, and that would be this. So Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, they showed up at the door. They did not knock, and they were let in. I mean, they did not kick the door down. Instead, they were let in. And before anything could escalate from the Young Bucks side, or whatever the case may be, CM Punk immediately grew a punch at Matt Jackson. Now, Kenny Omega, now here's what happened. Now, this is an actual fact right here. If you saw the pay-per-view, then you should have seen this as well. CM Punk entered the arena with Ace Steel and CM Punk's dog. So he brought his dog, Larry, to the event. He was interviewed, and Larry was right there along with Ace Steel. So continuing with the Young Bucks side of the story, wherever the case may be. So they walked in, CM Punk immediately threw the first punch. Kenny Omega went to get the dog because the dog was barking like crazy and apparently scared. And it wasn't like a big old dog or anything. It was a small dog if you would have seen the pay-per-view. So Kenny Omega went to grab the dog, get the dog out of the room. And then when he went back in to try and separate everybody, that's when Ace Steel grabbed Omega's hair and bit him. So that's their side of the story. No mention of Ace Steel's wife being in the room, which is, so it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. So what happened? What was the result of all this so far? Well, here's the result so far. The Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Pat Buck, Christopher Daniels, Michael Nakazawa, and Brandon Cutler are all suspended. So you probably wonder, wait a minute, who's these other people? So Christopher Daniels is a producer as well. So he got suspended. I don't know what he did, but he got suspended. Michael Nakazawa and Brandon Cutler, they kind of like, I don't know what they do behind the scenes, but like on air, they basically managers or they support the elite. They got suspended, and I have no clue who Pat Buck is, but not to mention, I have no clue what he did. He got suspended too. And in addition to that, so they did their show, their first show ever since All Out, which is Dynamite. And at the beginning of the show, it was announced that the elite, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, who Sunday night was in a match of their own, and they won the first ever AEW World Trios Tag Team titles. So they like, 3-man belts. They were the first ever to do it. They were stripped of the belts. Also, the World Heavyweight Championship was also vacant as well. So even though we know what happened to the likes of Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, they got suspended. More likely, they got suspended. What going to happen with CM Punk and Ace Steel is still up in the air at this point in time. As far as we know, they're suspended. But it could be much worse. They could either get fired or CM Punk could be leaving because he been having issues with the Young Bucks and with really the Elite for a while now backstage. So that's been an issue that CM Punk had to deal with as well. So what do I think of all this? This was a lot. And this is probably going to still be ongoing over the course of the next few days and possibly next couple of weeks or so. I don't know, like, if it was a defensive side on CM Punk and Ace part, them trying to defend themselves as the Young Bucks basically kicked the door down, or if they were the aggressors as soon as the Young Bucks were let in the room, CM Punk just started blasting, and Ace still went off as well. We don't know who was the aggressors were in this case, but it's going to be very interesting. And here's another thing. The other AEW talent, you know, the wrestlers and some of the people behind the scenes, apparently they are against CM Punk here. And even those who would normally support CM Punk, they're either like not taking his side here or they keeping their mouths shut. So this ain't a good look for CM Punk. And a lot of people within the AEW company are expecting CM Punk to get fired. So it's not good. It's not good for CM Punk. So my thing is this. So in terms of whether or not they should get suspended, well, we don't know how long their suspension is. It was never announced publicly that they got suspended from AEW themselves. But this is a very dicey situation. And people are already trying to pick sides. Like, they're trying to side with the Elite. They're trying to side with Punk. I'm not going to do that. Because, again, we don't have all the full details regarding what happened. Because it was reported that, oh, the cops was there. But comes to find out the cops were not there. Then it reported, oh, because of the fight, CM Punk got injured. But then, in actuality, it was like, no, that's not exactly what happened. He was injured prior to the fight because of his wrestling match with Jon Moxley. So there's a lot that is like up in the air regarding what actually happened. At the very least, I think that all of them should just be suspended. Now, if it's at a point where CM Punk cannot be in the same company as the Elite, he might dip. He straight up might dip. But I'll be honest, because of this news breaking out and because of how old CM Punk is, because he's not a young guy. He's not somebody who is at his prime, even though he just won the World Heavyweight Championship this past Sunday. But the fact of the matter is this: if he leaves the company, I think that's it. I don't think unless they're really desperate, I don't think another company is going to pick him up. WWE's not going to pick him up unless it's like a Legends thing where, yeah, they could bring him to the Hall of Fame and he may do like one match per 3 years or something like that. I don't know. But outside of that, WWE is not going to pick him back up after everything that he said about them. And for the most part, continue to say about them. So they're not, and then not to mention Triple H is pretty much the head guy in charge now. Vince McMahon is gone. He's out the door. And Triple H and CM Punk, they don't like each other. So yeah, they're not picking him up. There's no way they're picking him up to be a full-time wrestler. That's not happening. And I don't know about CM Punk going to Japan, because I'm not sure if Japan would want to pick him up. And really, it's like WWE, AEW, and Japan. Those are the three biggest promotions out there. Everything else is small time, and I think it would not look good for CM Punk to go to a smaller promotion. So if he leaves or he gets fired, that's it. His wrestling career is over. So again, I'm not going to pick sides, and at the very least, all of those who was involved should be suspended, and that's it. If CM Punk gets fired or he leaves the company, his career is over. I'm calling it right now, and I'm gonna call it a wrap. Speaking of calling things, with all that said, y'all know who this is. This is boy New J Gatsby, aka New Stephen A. Smith, saying peace out, y'all, and I'll see y'all next time. Yeah.